right? Tonight we're reading Frisco Pigeon Mambo by C.D. Payne. Chapter 1. Heard the latest rumor? Asked Petey, puffing placidly on the Dragomatic. The word is, we're actually pigeons. I am not a pigeon, stated Honky with conviction, fluttering his wings. Am I, Robin? Of course you're not, I agreed. And neither am I. I don't know where Petey gets such preposterous notions. Petey coughed, expelling a millet seed, then spoke. Robin, take your beak out of that sherry tube and answer me this. If we are not pigeons, why do they feed us hygienic pigeon chow? My ID band tinkled softly against my leg as I scratched at a nit. They feed us hygienic pigeon chow as part of a scientific experiment, I said. We are explorers on the frontier of knowledge. Snorted Petey, puffing away. An experiment designed to prove what exactly? I suppose that humans can thrive on pigeon chow, I replied. I find it quite satisfying, especially served with a nice dry sherry. Me too, agreed Honky. Besides, I noted, why would Dr. Milgreen name a pigeon Robin? That would be too absurd. Why did he name you Robin? Asked Honky. I think he was inspired by the russet tinge of my feathers, I explained. Robin is, I believe, Latin for red. And why was I named Honky? Inquired my pal. Is it because my feathers are pure, stark, unadulterated white? Exactly so, I replied. Honky is Latin for white, just as PT is a common colloquialism for grossly corpulent. Your scholarship is as miserable as your puny physique, replied Petey, puffing sedately. Petey, snapped Honky, don't bogart the Dragomatic. Okay, keep your feathers on. Petey edged his porcine bulk over the perch. He is a broad, gray-feathered fellow with a prodigious appetite for tobacco, sunflower seeds, and, so he thinks, knowledge. What are we smoking today? I asked, sipping my sherry too. Chester Boggs, answered Honky, blowing smoke rings at Petey's head. Damn, I prefer Calms, I said. I wonder what brand Sam Spade smokes. Lovely Mary Ann, our favorite lab assistant, has been reading to us from the Maltese Falcon, a book she's studying in class. She's an English major, which Petey says is a British military officer of middle rank. She certainly looks wonderful in her uniforms. She has downy, fine golden feathers, slender, nearly nude wings, and an attractively prominent bifid breast. Marianne is reading to us to take our minds off Wallace, our cage mate who died recently. What a shock. We woke one morning, and there he was, down on the soiled litter paper, with his toes in the air, stiff as a cuttlebone. Later, I heard Dr. Melbreen tell Marianne to dissect his cardiovascular system and centrifuge his liver. I imagine that is some sort of solemn funeral rite. I only wish we'd been invited to the services. A shady character named Joel Cairo just offered Sam Spade $5,000 for a statuette of a black bird, then pulled a gun on him. Fortunately, Mr. Spade wrestled away the pistol and knocked the fellow unconscious. I'd love to pursue an exciting career as a detective, though I'm not entirely clear what such a vocation entails. Modern writers are so lax in defining their terms. What exactly is $5,000? And how similar is apartment 1001 at the Coronet to a stainless steel laboratory cage? I hope the author intends to explicate these mysteries soon. I'm feeling a little edgy today. Petey is monopolizing the Dragomatic again. I can't understand why everyone has his own personal sherry tube, but we're forced to make do with just one Dragomatic. Petey theorizes that Dr. Milbreen is trying to induce stress in our lives. But why would he want to do that? The man is like a father to me. Dr. Eli Milbreen is a world-renowned professor of biology at the University of California at Berkeley. Petey, Hunky, and I are elite volunteers assisting him with his research as part of Test Group C. We're obliged to smoke cigarettes, drink sherry, and consume regulated quantities of hygienic pigeon chow. Group B residents in the next row over have to do their seed munching and smoking entirely sober. Group A subjects are even more deprived. All they're permitted to do is dine on hygienic pigeon chow and go up on the roof periodically for something called fresh air. I don't know why they're called the control group. They have so little control over their own happiness. Group D members are the real party animals. They smoke, booze it up, and dine on rich delicacies like deep-fried prawns, cocktail wieners, macadamia nuts, barbecued pork ribs, and chocolate cheesecake. Often we can hear them down at their end of the lab whooping it up. Wallace, before he died, confided he'd heard rumors of a Group E caged in another room. The same delightful lifestyle as Group D, with the further stimulation of mixed-sex cohabitation. Perhaps it was just wishful thinking on his part. Wallace was always sweet on Julie, a Group A experimenter who lives across the aisle with Darla and Blanche. All nice, plain feathered girls, if a little controlled, but clearly not in the same league as my dear Mary Ann. Sitting on her lovely finger last night after our reading, while she softly stroked my head, I felt the most exquisite tingle suffuse my body, pleasant but unnerving. Could this be love? Honky just dropped a large sunflower seed on Petey's head, freeing up the Dragomatic. I'm next in line after Honky, I announced. Go pluck yourselves, grumbled Petey, theatrically daubing sherry on his ruffled noggin. Honky says we're smoking Marlboros today, a brand that often causes me to gaze with a steely glint toward the western horizon. This is not as easy as it sounds, especially when one's eyes are situated on opposite sides of one's head. We all have our particular talents. I am also able to walk without bobbing my head excessively. Petey can empty an entire sherry tube while remaining upright on his perch, and Honky can decipher the labels on cigarette cartons. He used to read the profoundly obscure inscriptions on lab assistants' t-shirts, but gave it up to appease Petey, who, though illiterate, fancy himself the intellectual of our cage. It's hard for a self-acknowledged egghead to confess he is as perplexed as the rest of us by the phrase, young dickhead's total pillage world tour. Dr. Milbreen just made his daily rounds through the lab. Hello, men, he said, stopping at our cage and making notations on his clipboard. How are we today? Any signs of palsied tremor or hacking cough? Dr. Milbreen is so solicitous of our welfare. He's a true man of the people, even though he's on everyone's short list for the Nobel Prize. Every time the lab phone rings, I expect it's long distance from Stockholm. Usually, though, it's Eldon, our flunky day shift lab assistant, calling in to say he overslept. I'm smoking heavily today. My nerves are on edge. Last night, in Sam Spade's apartment, that slimy Joel Cairo got into a fight with nice Brigid O'Shaughnessy. As the quarrel escalated into violence, 2 police detectives arrived and threatened everyone with arrest. Now Mr. Spade's being followed by a sullen youth with a gun. Petey says adolescents are the price parents pay for the pleasures of procreation. I must weigh this carefully before making further advances toward Mary Ann. Yesterday I sat on her shoulder and nuzzled her silken, perfumed ear. Wonderful. Damn, the butt got stuck in the ejector impeller. Now the Dragomatic's jammed. If slothful Eldon doesn't shuffle by in the next 2 minutes, someone's going to get his rude anatomy pecked the next time he opens his cage. Hi, Robin, called a voice from the Control Group A cage. Oh, hi, Darla, I replied distractedly. You sound like you're sober today, Robin. She's right. In my agitated state, I'd been neglecting my sherry tube. I took an emergency swig. The roof was beautiful this morning, she continued. A gray haze lifted, and you could see all the way to the Golden Gate. Was it opened? I inquired, making an effort to appear interested. Was what open? She asked. There's no point talking to him, Darla, sniffed Blanche. The fellow's a drunk. They're all a bunch of cage-bound, inebriated, nicotine-breath rubes. The sweetest music on earth, noted Petey. The prim condemnations of the self-righteous prude. Here, here, said Honky. Can I buy you fellows a drink? We turned our backs on the ladies and bellied up to our beverage taps. Down the aisle, the Group D gang was crunching noisily into a bag of fried pork rinds. I suppose there must be some sort of world out there beyond the walls of this cozy lab, but I think Honky's right. It really is no concern of ours. We're in shock. Brigid OShaughnessy is missing. Last night she disappeared on the way to Effie Perrine's apartment. Poor Mr. Spade. First his partner gets shot, then he falls in love with a client in distress, and now she disappears. And nearly everyone is trying to pin assorted murder raps on him. After the reading, swept up in the emotions of the moment, I kissed Mary Ann. She responded by pressing her soft, voluptuous beak against my head. Never have I experienced such tumultuous emotions. It was all I could do to maintain my composure as she moistened the lab towel and daubed her scarlet beak coloring from my feverish brow. After lights out, I sat on my perch and thought of my future life together with Mary Ann. Of course, we'll have to get a larger cage, one with a shelf for Mary Ann's English books and a desk for my detective business. Honky and Petey can live in the cage next door and come over for sherry parties. Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if Dr. Melgreen gave us a transfer to Group D as a wedding present. Those fried pork rinds should taste pretty special, shared with the woman I love. Thank God the lab assistant stocked the Dragomatic with unfiltered crambles. There's nothing like a jolt of unexpurgated nicotine to clear the head and calm the nerves. Already, Eldon, though hampered by a bandaged thumb, has had to reload twice. His grungy t-shirt, Honky informed me privately, reads, "Extra fries or the Nobel Prize. Have it your way." Extraordinarily opaque, whispered Honky. Virtually unfathomable, I agreed. What are you two cooing about? Demanded Petey. We were just remarking how attractive the ladies look today, answered Honky diplomatically. Across the aisle, Darla and Julie smiled. Blanche studied us coldly through the bars of her cage. It's degenerates like you, she observed, who put a permanent crimp in a girl's nest-building instincts. Glad to hear it, commented Petey, not withering under her icy glare. Child rearing is such a juvenile pastime. I'm feeling a bit on edge today, remarked Honky, sipping from his sherry tube. So am I whispered. I feel anxious and restless, very unsettling. It's worse when I gaze longingly upon my dear Mary Ann. She's very attractive, agreed Petey, except for her feet. I'm highly attracted to bright red feet, said Honky, admiring his own lumpy carmine toes. Mary Ann has regrettably hideous feet. Did you see her yesterday in those open-toed sandals? I did, I must confess. Her feet were shockingly pale and smooth, hardly a bump or nodule to captivate the eye. Then again, none of us is perfect. One must not dwell on the shortcomings of one's love. I myself am not as tall or broad-shouldered as one might wish, nor am I as handsome as Zeb, short for Zebulon, of Test Group D, with his dark shimmering feathers and film star good looks. Robin has very attractive feet, commented Darla. They're wonderfully red and knobby, very scaly too. She's right, of course. How nice of her to notice. I only hope Mary Ann is as observant. Something is wrong, terribly wrong. The odious fat man, Casper Gutman, had just given Mr. Spade a drugged drink when, crash, the door to the lab flew open. Dropping her book in surprise, Mary Ann leaped up as a half-dozen masked, black-garbed intruders swept into the room. Freeze right there, shouted a burly man, waving what Petey informed me later was an automatic revolver. Who are you? Demanded my love, bravely standing her ground. Arf! Barked the invaders. Oh no! Exclaimed Mary Ann. Not animal rights forever! Yes, affirmed the man. We are liberating this lab. You can't, pleaded my sweetheart. 6 graduate students have their entire academic careers invested in this project. The man sneered under his bizarre gauze-like mask, later identified by Petey as a pair of ladies' black fishnet pantyhose. You're breaking my heart. Seize the animal torturer. 2 men grabbed Mary Ann. She struggled to pull away. Grappling fiercely, they fell back against our cage. Enraged, I leaped toward the bars and locked onto featherless flesh. Aye! Shrieked one of the women. Something's biting me. Bertie, let go, shouted her fellow thug, wrestling my dearest into a headlock. We're on your side. I bit down harder, tasting a spurt of warm saltiness. Help! Screamed the woman. He's amputating my elbow. Shoot him, Ted. No, exclaimed Mary Ann, suddenly ceasing to struggle. Robin, let go. Exerting all my strength, I squeezed my jaws in one last ferocious bite, then released my grip. The woman sobbed and pulled away, clasping her injured wing. Damn, I'm bleeding. Serves you right, muttered my love, right before a male invader slapped a length of thick tape across her sweet beak. Rudely, the female thug bound Mary Ann's silken wings behind her back with the drag-o-matic cord. Okay, cover the cages, commanded Ted, the gun-toting leader. Let's start moving them out. What's happening? Whimpered Honky, cowering in a heap with Petey under the pigeon chow tray. Before I could reply, a black cover descended over our cage, blotting out the light, as the only home we'd ever known began to swing and pitch violently. Earthquake! Shouted Honky, a whirlwind of panicked fluttering in the tumultuous, all-encompassing blackness. No, it's not, gasped Petey, rebounding heavily against the bars with every bounce. They're taking us somewhere. This is an outrage, shouted Zeb from the Group D cage. We haven't finished our fried pork rinds. I fear the worst, groaned Petey. We're all going to be viciously slaughtered. Robin, where are you? Called a faraway voice that sounded like Darla's. Robin! Here I am, I sang, receiving no reply. Don't be afraid. Suddenly, we were enveloped in frigid air. Metal doors slammed shut, a rumbling mechanical sound roared, and we began to move. We're being kidnapped, I shouted. Yes, I realized with horror. We were being plucked from our loved ones, just as heroic Samuel Spade had been wrenched from his own dearest Brigid. Chapter 2. I'd kill for a cigarette, muttered Honky. I'd peck my grandmother bald for a drink, remarked Petey. I'd give up all my earthly goods for one crummy sunflower seed, I swore. You don't have any earthly goods, sneered Petey. And where the hell are the lab assistants? This place looks like it hasn't been cleaned in years. Yeah, agreed Honky, anxiously peering around. When do they turn on the heat? My feet are close to frozen, and there's an icy draft blowing up my tail feathers. We were huddled in the darkness under a grimy metal box inscribed on the side, according to Honky, with the words U.S. Mail. Moments before, the kidnappers had screeched to a halt, pulled us rudely from our cage, and clipped off our metal leg bands, abandoning us in the lonely night. They climbed back into their white motorized box and drove off with our friends into the misty blackness. Robin, I have this tremendously urgent desire to return home, confessed Honky. Of course you do, I replied. We all do. It's only human. Look, said Petey. Some liquid is starting to fall from overhead. Maybe it's a dry domestic sherry, I exclaimed. As one, we rushed out and opened our beaks to the heavens. A disappointingly familiar liquid splashed into my eyes and down my throat. Bath water, spat Petey, incredulous. We don't get baths in the middle of the night, protested Honky. Don't they know the damn schedule? Expectorating violently, we scurried back under the sheltering box as the wretched dribbling intensified. Help me, guys, cried Honky. I've got something gross stuck to my toe. Pecking gingerly, Petey dislodged a pale lump from Honky's left foot. What is it? Asked our alarmed companion. Is it alive? It's a cigarette butt, I exclaimed. You're right, Robin, said Petey. Too bad someone flattened it. But we could still smoke it, said Honky excitedly. We could if we had some way to light it, answered Petey. I don't see any dragomatics around here. Wait a minute, I said, thinking out loud. Eldon used to light his cigarettes with a match. That's it, said Honky. We need a match. Excuse me, sir, I called to a small bird-like figure, possibly a pigeon, loitering across the way in the doorway. Excuse me. You talking to me? He grumbled, fluffing his dingy feathers. Yes. Do you by any chance have a match? Sure. Your face and a seagull's backside. I exchanged glances with Honky and Petey as the fellow chortled convulsively. Sir, I think you misunderstood me, I said. We need a match to light our cigarette. It's urgent, added Honky. The fellow stopped laughing. You dudes aren't from around here, are you? No, I replied. We're from Berkeley. Oh, college boys, he sneered. I might have known. I don't think he has any matches, said Petey. Sir, I called, can you tell us where we are? You're in the big town, boys. San Francisco. San Francisco? We exclaimed. And how do we get to Berkeley? Asked Honky. Cheat, the stranger replied, guffawing anew at his dismal jest. The fellow is an imbecile, whispered Pete. I decided to try one more approach. Sir, can you tell us where we could obtain some hygienic pigeon chow? Sure, Garden Court to the Palace Hotel. I've always heard the chow there is plenty hygienic. Swell, I replied. Is it within walking distance? I guess so, he said. 2 blocks east, 1 block north, but it's quicker to fly. Oh, we don't fly, I explained. We're not pigeons. You're not, huh? You guys trying to pass as doves? Well, let me tell you, bud, a dove ain't nothing but a pigeon with a fancy PR. You don't understand, I replied. We're not birds at all. We're humans. Damn, he muttered, shaking his head. This town is really going to the cats. What's a cat? Asked Hunky brightly. Oh, Jesus, the bird exclaimed, flying off into the downpour. After a rough night, we're all feeling a little queasy, unable to light the cigarette butt and growing ever more ravenous. We decided to experiment. We ate it. The tobacco was moderately palatable, but we could barely gag down the paper and the fuzzy stuff at the end. At least the fragrant beak-coloring stains reminded me of my dear lost Mary. I trust by now Dr. Melgreen has found and untied my love. I hope the professor is coping with the cataclysmic disruption of his life's work. Somehow we must locate our friends, find our way back, and bring those cruel ARF invaders to justice. As day dawned, more and more boxes on wheels began rolling by our shelter. Frigid bathwater continues to dribble annoyingly from the sky. Crowds of people are walking by, some holding odd little cloth domes on sticks over their heads, and a few, I noted enviously, smoking cigarettes. Why, I wonder, isn't everyone enjoying this delightful pastime? If only there were some way to ask for a neighborly smoke for me and my pals, or a quick toot from a sherry tube. Odd, we seem to have a much easier time communicating with birds and other lower life forms. Honky just pulled a rubbery substance off the concrete and is attempting to eat it. From the distinctive aroma, I think it may be that material Eldon used to chew when he was foolishly trying to give up smoking. Odd. He never could masticate it sufficiently to permit swallowing. Honky seems to be having the same trouble. I hope the substance doesn't begin manifesting its other strange quirks. Look, Phyllis, said a woman passing by. That white pigeon down there is blowing a bubble with its gum. Don't stop, Windy, said her companion. It's probably been trained by professional pickpockets. I never realized the world was so full of people. San Francisco is teeming with them, of every shape, size, age, and color, and so rude. They just plow forward and expect us shorter fellows to hop out of their way. And shockingly callous. Heading off to our long-delayed breakfast at the Palace Hotel, Honky had to lie down to rest for some time after finally swallowing his gum. We saw a giant box on wheels roll completely over a gray bird-like animal, possibly a pigeon. The box did not stop, and no one except us paid the slightest attention to the tragedy. Maybe the poor bugger just had the wind knocked out of him, said Honky, stunned. This guy is flattened to less than 5 millimeters. replied Petey, studying the pancaked corpse. He's a goner. Petey, quick! I shouted. Get out of the way! Petey leaped back just in time as another giant box on wheels filled with people hanging from poles rumbled by. Only walk when the tall people walk, I instructed my friends. See, the rolling boxes seem to stop for them. On the way to the hotel, we paused in front of a rusty yellow box displaying the morning newspaper. Honky, what does it say about the lab raid? I asked. Is Marianne all right? Honky looked up and read the banner headline. Big cost overruns expected for new fighter jet. Are you sure you got that right? Demanded Petey. I remember hearing about that story a long time ago on Eldon's boombox. That's what it says, guys. No mention of the raid. Looks like we don't rate page 1. I'm totally depressed. I'm more depressed than you are, announced Petey. I'm lost in a strange city. I'm wet. I'm cold. I smell bad. I'm crawling with parasites. I haven't slept a wink. My feet hurt, and every nerve cell in my body is incessantly clamoring for a smoke and a drink. That's nothing, said Honky. I've got all those miseries, plus a giant wad of previously chewed gum is congealing my insides. Come on, guys, I said, walking on. Let's settle this over breakfast. The Palace Hotel, we discovered, was an immense gray stone structure rising imposingly above bustling crowds of damp people. I guess this is the place, I said. I hope they're still serving breakfast. Resolutely following an elderly man in through a strange revolving door, we ducked behind a miniature tree and a shiny golden pot. Oh, it's nice, exclaimed Honky. Feel this plush litter paper. Very posh, agreed Petey. Which way to the pigeon chow? This way, I think, I said, trying not to be intimidated by the opulent surroundings. We slithered through a doorway leading to a large room redolent with enticing food aromas. Overhead, a vast glass ceiling glowed with exotic jewel-like colors. Here and there, elegantly dressed people, seated at small cloth-draped tables amid a veritable pygmy forest of miniature trees and pots, were feeding themselves with sparkling metal implements. White-coated lab attendants, bearing bottles of liquids, possibly sherry, moved silently from table to table. In a corner, 4 black-garbed performers stroked shiny wooden boxes with thin sticks, producing harmonious waves of soft screeching. Elegant, to be sure, but we only had eyes for the long white-draped table along the near wall. There, laid out in splendid array, was a feast to tempt even the most jaded Group D gourmand. In a flash, we were behind the table and reconnoitering the situation. I'm going off my pigeon chow diet, declared Honky. For good. I hope Dr. Milbring won't be upset. I think he'll understand given the circumstances, I said. But how do we get up there? Asked Petey. Boy, I wish we could fly. If wishes were horses, replied Honky, beggars would ride. Spare me your dime-store homilies, retorted Petey. We'll have to tug our way up the tablecloth with our beaks, I said. Let's go, men. The climb was arduous, unaccustomed as we were to strenuous physical labor, but soon even Petey had heaved his disheveled bulk upon the glistening white surface, laden with shimmering plates piled high with rich delicacies. Not a millet seed in sight. We dove in. Oh, these crispy, savory items are delicious, called Honky, crunching into thin brown strips. Well, I can recommend this slippery stuff, said Petey, slurping down small black globules. You can skip the chilled, slimy matter and the iridescent shells, I shuddered. It's ghastly. I tasted a slender, pale item. Much better. A bit salty, but good. Eek! Cried a voice. We looked up from our banquet. An elderly woman with a deceased furry animal draped around her shoulders was pointing a pronged metal implement at us. Help! She screamed. Pigeons are trampling on the buffet. How revolting, declared her companion, an elderly male nearly devoid of head feathers. There's a damn feathered rat standing in the kippered herring. Attempting to appear inconspicuous, Petey ducked behind a tall mound of fuzzy golden spheres. I leaped out of the herring and splashed breast deep through a tray of warm yellow sponginess. Honky, too startled to move, stared bug-eyed at the couple and began to gag. Across the room a door flew open, and an angry lab attendant ran toward us carrying a menacing stick with a bristling fanned-out end. Let's get out of here, I shouted. Petey dived headfirst off the table. Honky continued to gag and heave, finally disgorging onto the woman's plate a large wad of pink chewing gum. Oh my God, it's his stomach, she screamed, dropping to the floor like a stone as the approaching lab attendant waved his stick above his head. I shoved Honky off the table and jumped after him. We bolted toward the door as Petey puffed after us, pursued by screaming lab attendants, several irate box strokers, and the unconscious woman's rat-loathing companion. Somehow, we made it through the revolving door just ahead of the vengeful mob, darting to safety between the legs of startled pedestrians. We fled down the block, turned the corner, and kept on running until Petey collapsed to the concrete, exhausted. I can't go another step, he gasped. That's okay, Petey, I said. I think we're safe now. Why are people so selfish? Demanded Honky. We eat so little and they have so much. Why? I don't know why, I replied. Perhaps we made a mistake. Perhaps they knew we were in test group C and weren't supposed to be eating that food. Well, they could have been a little more gracious about it, said Petey, getting back his wit. Feathered rats, indeed. I'll tell you one thing, said Honky. It's enough to make me ashamed to be a member of the human race.